We are so far on the spectrum that privileges wealthy people that we could travel so very far without even touching socialism.
We're at the Variety Virtual Sundance Studio presented by Audible, and I'm joined today by Abigail Disney and Kathleen Hughes. They're the co-directors of a new documentary entitled The American Dream and Other Fairytales. Abigail, you have a rather personal connection to the material in this film. Could you explain a little bit about your family connection to the Walt Disney Company?
My grandfather co-founded the company with Walt, and he was CEO of the company from the day Walt died until he passed away. So it was his life, that company.
In recent years, you have become much more outspoken and public about your views in terms of CEO compensation and also the way that many major corporations treat their employees. Could you tell us just a little bit about why you decided to become more public about some of your concerns and views that this was a system that needed some reform?
Going public is maybe the hardest decision I ever made. What am I? I'm just a niece. I'm nobody special. But I know that everything I have and every privilege and joy I have is attributable to people who work really, really, really hard. When I went out there and spoke to them that first time, I just couldn't tolerate it. I just couldn't stay silent.
And Kathleen, could you talk a little bit about how you got involved on this project?
We made a film called The Armor of Light. We've been sort of hashing about trying to figure out what the next film would be. And Abby went to California and met up with some of the workers at Disneyland. And, when she came back, it was pretty clear that this might be a really interesting project. I've cared about this subject writ large for a very long time, and in other places have done storytelling about inequality and the growing gap between the haves and the have-nots. But what an opportunity to talk about it through the lens of the Disney company, a corporation that is so American and that in so many ways, when you just say the word Disney, people stop.
What was the sort of the time frame of when you start to shoot this? Because you run up right into the pandemic, which, kind of exposes a lot of the same issues that you're talking about. But when did you start this project?
I went on CNBC on Squawk Box, and I was there to talk about wealth taxes, but Andrew Ross Sorkin asked me a very unexpected question about CEO pay because Bob Iger had just gotten his pay package that day. And I said, Jesus Christ himself isn't worth that much money. and because it went viral, I sort of fleshed it out in a series of tweets, which went viral. And that's when Kathy and I looked at each other and said, well, what do? We make films. That's how we communicate. So why don't we take charge of communicating about this?
The film also makes the point that not only does Bob Chapek make fortunes in a year that people couldn't spend in a lifetime, but that people who work at Disneyland and Disney World live really on the economic margin. So was that something that you were as aware of?
I hadn't been aware of just how bad it was. And then the year we started, there had been a series of articles about precisely this. So it was starting to come to my attention. And then I got a Facebook message from one of the employees there. And he said, you have to help us. And, you can talk about income inequality all you want. But when you sit in the room with people who are living that reality, you see those hands go up in the film when I ask how many of you are on food stamps, how many of you slept in your car, how many of you have not gotten healthcare. Every single hand in the room goes up. And it's a gut punch, honestly. That's real. That's real lived misery. And I just couldn't stand it.
When you have people who are working full time, but who are relying on the public system for, healthcare and for food, our taxes are going there. It's a system that we're all kind of accepting as something that is absolutely just the way it works.
Also co-opted our entire political system.
Right.
There's no denying that the more money flows upward, the more those people at the top insist on crafting a political context to their own pleasing. And it's a self-perpetuating problem. I was one of those naive people who thought when the pandemic started, at long last, people will be able to see this laid bare. People saw it laid bare and they were fine with it. Billionaires are trillions of dollars richer after the pandemic. The stock market went up, not down. I don't understand how that feels like anything but a system that is broken.
Sure. The whole time Disney talks about it, we create all these jobs, we generate an economy here, we're so valuable to the community, which they are. But when they talk about all the jobs they create, they never really talk about what those jobs pay and what kind of livelihood people can really have on those jobs. It's just the counting of the numbers of jobs.
This is why I keep saying that, we need to shift policy, we need to legislate, we need to regulate, but we also need to shift the norms of corporate culture, because right now it's basically a legal kleptocracy. Just go pick up every penny you can possibly pick up.
Bob Iger has now left the company and has been replaced by Bob Chapek. Do you have any sense that things might be different under a new regime?
I want to be optimistic, and I wish I were optimistic, but most of what happened for workers at Disneyland and Disney World, in the pressuring down of their salaries, in the dynamic scheduling, in the cutting a department by 50 people, but still asking everybody to do the same amount of work. There's a million ways to cut a person's wages, not just in the number that they make. He was the guy who presided over all of that. The signs haven't been that good so far, but I will say that they did raise the salaries of their minimum wage workers. And I was thrilled to see that. I'm delighted. I would be thrilled to be wrong about them.
I say bravo too, but we can't forget that the workers fought very hard for those raises. It wasn't just the generosity of the corporate managers to say, oh, I think we should give people more money now. There's been a multi-year struggle for higher wages, just to say, let's give the workers a little credit for standing up for themselves, which I think is important.
It seems unlikely that CEOs will give back parts of their salary or ask for a more equitable distribution of profits. So how do we change this?
There are companies out there who are doing this better. And there are CEOs who believe that their well-being is tied up with the well-being of their employees. PayPal is one, Costco is one, Salesforce is one. You could list quite a few companies. Just Capital has a website where you can go look at the scores for companies that represent people well. I don't think it's unlikely for CEOs to change if we change social norms. My business school professor said to me, when I talk about ethics in my business course, half the class is already with me, these first-year business students. So, it took 20 years for the teachings of Milton Friedman to find their way to the business schools and then to infiltrate the ideologies of those people who went on to become CEOs. We're basically run as a business culture by people who swallowed the Milton Friedman line whole without questioning it. And there's going to be a sea change. When that generation of CEOs retires, we're going to see different kinds of people run companies.